The walls still echoed with their anger when I said it. Liam's voice cracked, demanding what he thought was his. The condo. The promise. The inheritance that existed only in his mind. Bree's eyes were glassy, her mascara running like black rivers. The binder on the counter gleamed under the morning light. I didn't shout. I just whispered, calm and final. There's something else you don't know yet. My name is Evelyn Grace Carter. I'm 64 years old, and that was the day my son realized his mother was no longer afraid. But what they didn't know was, before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it walks into your kitchen, kisses your cheek, and calls you Mom. When I close my eyes, I can still hear the sound of the leaky faucet in the old kitchen. Drip, pause, drip, like a slow clock measuring how much of my life I had given to that place. For 30 years, that condo was the center of everything Hal and I built. We painted the walls ourselves, fought over curtain colors, burned the first Thanksgiving turkey, laughed until midnight on an old plaid sofa. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Every scratch on the floor had a story. Every window stain had a season behind it. Hal used to say, "Eve, one day this place will outlive us." I always thought he was wrong. But after he passed, the condo did outlive him and nearly swallowed me whole. Hal's death was quiet. No warning. No drama. A heart that simply stopped beating in his sleep. One moment he was snoring softly beside me. The next morning the bed was too still. Too cold. The paramedics were gentle. But the silence they left behind was deafening. For months afterward, I moved like a ghost through the rooms, touching his coffee mug, straightening the blanket he'd left on the couch, pretending he'd come back to claim them. I thought Liam would fill that silence. He was my only child, my reason to keep breathing. When he came by for the first time after the funeral, he hugged me tightly. His eyes were red. "You'll be okay." "Mom." His eyes were red. I nodded, believing him. The calls came every other week. Short ones. Always when he was driving or waiting in line for coffee. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. You good?" I'd say I was fine. He'd say, "Okay. Gotta run." And that was that. At first, I told myself it was normal. People get busy. Lives move forward. I had no right to cling. But as months passed, loneliness settled in like dust on unused furniture. It crept into my bones, made the apartment feel smaller, the air heavier. Then Liam brought Bree home. I still remember the smell of her perfume suite. Floral. A little too strong. She wore high heels even inside, as if she was afraid the floor might stain her. "Mrs. Carter," she said with a smile so bright it hurt my eyes. "No. Call me Evelyn," I told her. "Oh." I couldn't. She insisted. "Your family. I'll call you Mom." Mom. The word melted me instantly. I'd always wanted a daughter. For the first few weeks, she brought flowers. Supermarket bouquets wrapped in shiny paper. She called me Mama Eve and sent heart emojis after every text. I thought I'd finally gained another piece of family. But one afternoon, I caught her scanning the living room like a realtor. Her eyes traced the furniture, the photos, the square footage. "You and Hal kept this place in such good condition," she said. "You could get a fortune if you ever decided to sell." I laughed nervously. "Oh, I don't think I could ever sell it. Too many memories." She smiled without warmth. "Sure, but when it's ours, I'd love to open the kitchen, maybe knock down that wall, when it's ours? The phrase slid through me like a cold knife. After that, the comments came disguised as jokes. This couch belongs in a museum. Mom. Or, when you're ready to retire to Florida, we'll take good care of the place. Always said with a giggle. Always harmless on the surface. But every joke left a bruise. Liam never noticed or pretended not to. He'd scroll through his phone, nodding along. She's just teasing. Mom. Don't be sensitive. Sensitive. That word again? Like my feelings were a flaw that needed fixing. I tried harder to please them. I cleaned before every visit. Baked Bree's favorite blueberry pie. Replaced the curtains because she said they were so 90 seconds. But nothing ever seemed enough. She'd find another thing to correct. You know, Mom, that plant doesn't go with the wall color. Mom, maybe you should try dressing brighter. It'll cheer you up. Each suggestion felt like a small erasure, like she was repainting me in softer colors until I disappeared completely. I didn't know it back then. But every harmless word would matter later. The breaking point came on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was in the bathroom, fixing a loose button on my blouse when I heard voices in the living room. The door hadn't slammed. They must have used the spare key I'd given Liam years ago. Think it's worth $270. Bree's voice floated in. Excited. Calculating. Maybe $280. Liam replied. That's enough for a down payment. Down payment for what? She asked, laughing. For our new house. When Mom's gone, I froze. The needle pricked my finger, drawing a bead of blood. But I didn't even flinch. My son's voice sounded casual, practical, like he was talking about the weather. Bree giggled. She'll never sell. She's too sentimental. She doesn't have to. Liam said, It'll be mine eventually. She promised. Promised. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to keep my breathing quiet. I had never promised anything. Not once. Good. Bree sighed. Because honestly, I don't know how much longer I can fake liking her cooking. Something inside me cracked so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I bit my lip to keep from crying out. When I finally came out, they were sitting on the sofa, pretending everything was normal. Mom, Bree chirped. We didn't know you were home. A lie. Liam glanced at me once, then back at his phone. I smiled, poured them coffee, and pretended too. Because mothers are trained to pretend. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, listening to the refrigerator hum, the city breathing outside. I replayed every memory, every dinner, every word I'd swallowed to keep peace. By sunrise, the tears had dried. What was left wasn't sadness, it was clarity. The next morning, I made coffee in Hal's old mug, the one with the chipped rim. I took out a notebook and started writing. Every insult, every dismissal, every manipulation. I needed to see it all on paper to prove to myself that it had really happened. By noon, I had filled 6 pages. 6 pages of quiet cruelty. The apartment felt different after that. Not smaller, sharper. Like it had woken up with me. 3 days later, Liam called. Mom, Bree and I want to talk about something important. I already knew what was coming. He arrived that weekend with Bree, all smiles and fake concern. Mom, he began, this condo is too big for you. You could sell it, get a smaller place, live more comfortably. Bree chimed in, her voice sugary. We could even buy it from you at a fair price. Keep it in the family. A fair price. I almost laughed. I'm not ready to sell, I said softly. Liam frowned. Mom, don't be selfish. You won't need it for long anyway. The words hit harder than any slap. Bree squeezed his hand, pretending to scold him, but her smile gave her away. What he means is, you should think about your family's future. I looked at them both and realized, for the first time, that I wasn't part of that future. When they left, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty coffee pot. I sat alone at the kitchen table. I could still hear Liam's voice echoing. That was the night I decided I wouldn't be selfless anymore. I didn't know it then, but that decision would change everything. The morning after that conversation, I woke up before sunrise. The city outside was still half asleep, a gray haze covering the skyline. I brewed my coffee in silence and opened the notebook again. The 6 pages of notes stared back at me, harsh and undeniable. They weren't just memories, they were evidence of my own erasure. For years, I'd been living as a supporting character in a story that used to be mine. That realization was both terrifying and liberating. I had spent decades waiting for people to notice me, to love me, to appreciate what I gave. But that morning, something inside of me whispered, no more waiting. Later that day, I went to the bank to update a small savings account Hal and I had opened years before. I hadn't planned anything dramatic, but sometimes fate hides in errands. While I waited for my number to be called, I overheard 2 women chatting at the next counter. My mom sold her house last month. One said, she bought a condo near the coast and used the rest to travel. She said she's done living for everyone else. The other laughed. Wow! Her kids must be furious. Probably, the woman said. But it's her life, not theirs. That sentence struck me like lightning. It's her life, not theirs. I left the bank with my heart pounding, the words echoing in my ears. I walked all the way home instead of taking the bus, letting the cool air calm my nerves. By the time I reached my building, the decision had already formed. I didn't know every detail yet, but I knew the headline. I would sell the condo and my guilt with it. I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and searched how to sell a condo quietly. Within hours, I was speaking to a realtor named Mr. Jacobs. We can list it privately, he said. No yard signs, no big ads, just serious buyers. Perfect, I told him. My voice barely trembled. The next morning, he arrived wearing a gray suit that smelled faintly of cologne and confidence. He walked through the apartment, taking notes, murmuring numbers. You could get 280, he said. But if you want a fast sale, I can find someone around 270. That's fine, I replied without hesitation. He blinked. You don't want to talk it over with your family first? No, I said. I don't need anyone's permission. He smiled in that professional way people do when they don't fully understand but respect the resolve in your voice. A week later, the offer came cash. No financing. Quick closing. I signed the papers with a pen Hal had once given me. The same pen we'd used to sign the mortgage 30 years ago. Somehow, that felt poetic. While the paperwork moved forward, Liam kept calling. Mom, have you thought about what we discussed? Liam kept calling. He'd ask. We just need the down payment soon. I'm still thinking. Sweetheart, I'd reply, keeping my tone even. He didn't notice the shift in me. For once, I wasn't begging for peace. I was buying it. When the closing day arrived, I stood in the empty living room, light spilling through the dusty blinds. The walls looked bare, stripped of all the family photos I'd already packed. I whispered to Hal, we did it. We're free. Then I locked the door one last time and handed the keys to Mr. Jacobs. Within 3 weeks, I moved into a smaller, brighter condo on the other side of town. 1 bedroom, a tiny balcony, and more sunlight than I'd seen in years. I bought new furniture, nothing expensive, just mine. For the first time since Hal died, the silence in my home didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. I knew the storm would come. Liam and Bree would eventually find out. And when they did, it would be ugly. But I wasn't afraid anymore. While unpacking one afternoon, I found an old metal key at the bottom of a jewelry box. It had a small tag. Safe deposit, Hal Carter. My chest tightened. I remembered Hal's voice, months before his death. If anything ever happens to me, that key is for you. Don't open it unless you really need to. I hadn't thought about it in years. Now it felt like he was whispering from the past, guiding me toward something. The next morning, I went to the bank listed on the tag. The clerk escorted me to a small room with beige walls and a faint smell of disinfectant. When she placed the metal box on the table, my hands shook. Inside were a few old documents. A photo of Hal and me on our wedding day, and an envelope with my name on it. The letter was handwritten in his steady, looping script. Eve, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know you. You'll carry the weight of everyone else until it breaks you. Don't. If life ever corners you, remember, you've already paid your dues. You owe no one your freedom. This home, this money, whatever's left, is your chance to live for yourself. Take it. I pressed the paper to my chest and cried quietly. But from the deepest place inside me, that was the first time in years that my tears felt cleansing, not humiliating. I made a copy of the letter and locked the original back inside the box. Something told me it would matter later. The following week, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a woman named Rita Nguyen. "Hi, Mrs. Carter," she said cheerfully. "I got your number from the community center. We're starting an art class for beginners. You signed up months ago but never showed. Want to join this time?" I almost said no. Old habits hard. But something in her voice, warm, unassuming, made me say yes. That Tuesday, I walked into a small studio that smelled of turpentine and coffee. Sunlight filtered through dusty windows. A group of women around my age sat at easels, laughing over crooked sketches. At the front, Ms. Aurelia Finch, our instructor, smiled and said, "There are no mistakes here, only discoveries." I picked up a brush and dipped it in blue paint. My hand trembled. The first stroke was uneven, awkward, but alive. It felt like breathing after years underwater. Over the next few weeks, the classes became my lifeline. Rita and I stayed after sessions, talking about books, travel, and the strange freedom of getting older. She had an easy laugh that filled the quiet corners of my new life. One afternoon, over coffee, she asked, "So, what made you start painting now?" I smiled faintly. Let's just say I needed to start over, to draw something that's finally mine. I didn't tell her about the condo. Not yet. Some stories need time to ripen before they can be shared. Then, one evening, as I returned home from class, I noticed a letter wedged in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a printed form from the Department of Social Services welfare check notification. Someone had anonymously reported that I might be mentally unfit to live alone. My heart pounded. There was only one explanation. I took a deep breath and smiled to myself. The storm had arrived right on schedule. I didn't know it then, but this concern for my well-being would become my greatest weapon later. The letter trembled slightly in my hands, but not from fear, from fury so cold it steadied me. I laid it on the kitchen table under the afternoon light and reread every word. Someone no need to guess who had claimed I was showing signs of confusion and might be endangering myself. I could almost hear Bree's voice rehearsing the concern. She forgets things. Officer. Poor woman. She's not the same since Hal passed. They wanted proof I was incapable so they could get everything signed over. Legally and neatly. When the knock finally came, I was ready. A polite young man from social services stood at my door, clipboard in hand, wearing the neutral expression of someone who's seen too many sad stories. Mrs. Carter, we received a welfare concern. Do you mind if I come in for a quick evaluation? Of course, I said pleasantly. Would you like tea? He blinked, surprised. Sure. Thank you. I led him inside my spotless apartment, the faint scent of lemon polish hanging in the air. On the counter sat my neatly organized bills, a calendar marked with art classes, doctor appointments, grocery lists all in my handwriting. I slid a folder toward him. These are my recent medical checkups, I said. And here's a letter from my physician confirming I'm in excellent health, mentally and otherwise. He leafed through the papers, eyebrows lifting. I also keep a daily journal, I added, pulling out a spiral notebook. You're welcome to check the entries. Dates, times, and everything I do. I like order. For a moment, he just looked at me, then smiled faintly. Mrs. Carter, I think you're fine. I'll mark this as resolved. When the door closed behind him, I finally let out a long breath. I wasn't shaken. I was electrified. Bree and Liam had fired their first real shot and missed. That night, I wrote a new entry in my notebook. They think I'm weak. Let them. 2 days later, the phone rang. Bree's number flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, she said in a trembling voice. The picture of remorse. I heard about some welfare thing. Someone must have misunderstood. We're so sorry if that upset you. Oh, I wasn't upset, I replied sweetly. The man was lovely, said I seemed sharp as ever. A pause, then a nervous laugh. Well, that's good. You know, Liam's been worried about you living alone. He just wants what's best. Of course he does, I said, keeping my tone light. And I want what's best for me. I could almost hear her jaw tighten. We're family. Mom. Families stick together. Yes, I said softly. When there's love, not ownership. The line went silent before she mumbled an excuse to hang up. From that day, their messages came daily. Bree sent photos of dream houses with captions like, "Can't you see us all together here? You'd have your own room." Liam left voicemails filled with guilt. Mom, you're shutting us out. We just want to help. But help never sounded so much like control. Weeks later, Rita and I were walking home from art class when she asked, You okay? You've been quiet today. I'm fine, I said, though my chest felt tight. I'm fine. She smiled knowingly. Then maybe it's time to make some noise. Her words stayed with me. A few evenings after, I found Marina's number flashing on my phone. Bree's older sister. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Evelyn. She began without greeting, her tone sharp and self-righteous. I'm calling because Bree's distraught. You've turned your back on your family. Don't you care about their future? I let her speak, her voice like sandpaper scraping against old wounds. When parents get older, she continued, they should think of legacy. You can't take the money with you. I waited for her to run out of air, then said evenly, Marina, you're right. I can't take it with me, but I can decide who doesn't get it. She gasped softly. The kind of sound people make when you refuse to play your assigned role. Goodbye, Marina, I said, and hung up. That night, I said, unfolded it carefully, and read the last line out loud. You owe no one your freedom, I whispered. I hear you. From that moment, I began documenting everything: calls, messages, even the timestamps. It wasn't paranoia, it was insurance. Still, I knew they wouldn't stop. People like Bree don't quit until they get what they believe they deserve. I was right. The next Saturday, Bree showed up at my door. Mascara smudged, eyes puffy, holding a paper bag of pastries like a peace offering. Can I come in? She asked, voice shaking. I hesitated just long enough to make her uncomfortable, then opened the door. The smell of cinnamon filled the room as she set the bag on the table. I just want to apologize, Mom, for everything, for the pressure. We've been stressed. I nodded, saying nothing. She wrung her hands. You know, Liam's been losing sleep. We thought if we got that house, everything would settle down. We made mistakes, but please don't hate us. I don't hate you, I said quietly. I just stopped letting you hurt me. Her eyes flickered, but she kept the act going. You have every right to live how you want. She stopped mid-sentence, glancing at her phone as a message popped up. For half a second, I saw it reflected on the screen. Bank called. Payment overdue. Need $5K by Monday. She caught me looking and quickly flipped it over. Too late. I smiled. Rough week. Her cheeks flushed. Just work stuff. Of course, I said, leaning back. We all have bills to pay. For the first time, she looked small, vulnerable. But even then, she couldn't help herself. You could help. Though, you have more than enough. That was the moment I knew the apology wasn't about guilt. It was about desperation. You have more than enough. While she sipped, I quietly pressed record on my phone lying face down on the table. Bree, I said softly, do you really believe you're entitled to my home? Her jaw tightened. Not entitled. Just expecting. Liam's your son, and that makes my life his property. No, she snapped. No, you're twisting my words. I smiled. I'm just repeating them. When she left, I stopped the recording and labeled the file October 17, visit. The evidence pile was growing nicely. I didn't know it yet, but I was building the case that would end everything. For a few weeks after Bree's apology, the air went quiet. Too quiet, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. I could feel it building, low and steady, like the hum of an approaching train you can't yet see. Every morning, I kept my routine. Coffee at 7. Art class on Thursdays. Walks with Rita on Sundays. I smiled more, laughed louder, painted brighter, laughed louder. And all the while, every call, every text, every concerned message disguised as care. Then, one afternoon, while I was trimming the small potted basil on my balcony, Liam showed up unannounced. He'd never been to the new place before. His knock was softer than usual, almost guilty. Mom, he said when I opened the door, eyes darting around the apartment. Nice place. Smaller than the old one. Huh. Yes, I said evenly. But it fits me. He nodded, trying to smile. Look, can we talk? Just without Bree. I gestured for him to sit. The sunlight spilled across the floor, cutting through the tension. He rubbed his palms together. Mom, I didn't know about that welfare check. Bree went behind my back. She worries. Does she? I asked quietly. He said, okay. Maybe she overstepped, but she thought that I was losing my mind. He looked down. She just wants security. We both do. Security, I repeated. And that requires my condo. He didn't answer. I leaned forward. Liam, I'm your mother. I raised you with love, not transactions. When did that stop being enough? His face crumpled for a second. I'm sorry. Mom, I really am. It's just, Bree's in deep with some investments. She thought she could fix her mistakes with my roof. He didn't deny it. Hal would be ashamed. I whispered. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Don't bring Dad into this. I held his gaze until he looked away. Then don't drag me into your debts. I held his gaze until he looked away. He left without another word. I sat at my desk and replayed the recording from my phone. His voice trembled. His excuses sloppy. It wasn't the smoking gun. But it was enough to show weakness, enough to remind me how tangled Bree's web had become. 2 days later, Bree texted, "Can we meet at the old place? Need to clear the air once and for all." My heart skipped. The old place. She had no idea I still had temporary access under the post-occupancy clause. It was still legally mine for a few more days. I smelled a setup, but I went anyway. I wanted her to think she was winning. When I arrived, the condo was half empty, stripped bare. The echo of my footsteps filled the room. Bree stood by the window, arms crossed, her reflection fractured by the sunlight. "I just want closure," she said. "So do I." She walked closer, her heels sharp against the tile. "You blindsided us. Evelyn. Selling without even talking to us. Do you have any idea what that did to Liam? I imagine it forced him to finally stand on his own 2 feet. Her mouth twitched. "You're cruel. I learned from the best." Something flickered in her eyes, then fear. Maybe. Or realization. She tried another tactic. "Look, I know I've made mistakes. But Liam doesn't deserve this. We're drowning. Evelyn, I'm begging you. Help us." The word begging tasted false in her mouth. I could see it. The way her voice trembled just enough. Her eyes glistened at the right moment. It was performance. "Help you," I said softly. "I already did. I stopped enabling you." Her mask slipped. "You think you're the victim here. You've manipulated everyone with your pity act. You think because you're old and widowed, you're untouchable." I smiled. "No. I think because I have evidence. I'm untouchable." She froze. "Evidence." I tapped my bag, where the binder sat like a quiet bomb. Recordings, letters, logs, things people say when they think no one's listening. Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't." "Wouldn't what?" "Defend myself." She stepped back, eyes darting toward the door. "You're sick." I leaned closer. "You should be careful with that word. People might start to wonder who's really unwell here." She stormed out without another word. The door slammed so hard the picture frame above the mantel rattled. I stood there for a long time, letting the silence settle again. My hands shook not from fear, but from release. For the first time, I felt the scales tipping. That evening, I called Rita. "If someone told you I was losing it," I asked, "would you believe them?" She laughed softly. "Evelyn, the only thing you're losing is patience for idiots." "Why?" "Because I think the world's about to find out just how sane I am." Rita paused. "You sound dangerous." "Maybe I am, After we hung up, I opened Hal's letter again. The words seemed to pulse under the lamplight. You owe no one your freedom. I slid it into the binder. Right behind the printed transcripts of Bree's apology and Liam's confession. The binder was thick, now an archive of betrayal. Then, just before midnight, I received one last text from Bree. We're coming by tomorrow. You owe us an explanation. I stared at the glowing screen and felt an unexpected calm. They still didn't understand. I didn't owe them anything. By the next sunrise, the plan for the confrontation was fully formed in my head. Where to stand, what to say, what to reveal, and when to stop talking. I brewed coffee, cleaned the table, and laid out the binder. The same table where we once shared family dinners would soon become my witness stand. They thought they were walking into a victory. They had no idea they were stepping into their own undoing. By the time they arrived, the morning light had turned sharp, bouncing off the bare walls of the old condo like glass. The air inside felt heavy, charged like the pause between lightning and thunder. I had brewed a pot of coffee I didn't intend to drink and placed 3 cups on the counter anyway. Rituals, after all, can make even war feel civil. Their footsteps echoed down the hallway before they appeared in the doorway. Liam first, shoulders tight, eyes darting. Bree followed, her lips pressed into that familiar, I'm in control smile. I could see her scanning the room, assessing the emptiness, realizing it wasn't hers. Mom, Liam started, voice strained. What is this? Why did you? I raised a hand, closed the door. He hesitated. Bree pushed past him and did it herself. The sound of it slamming shut reverberated through the empty space like a verdict. I thought we could talk calmly. I said, calmly. Bree laughed, brittle and high. You sold our home behind our backs. Our home. I tilted my head. You mean my home? The one Hal and I paid for with 30 years of work while you two were deciding which wine to order. Her face flushed. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said evenly, is pretending kindness while plotting ownership. Liam stepped forward, voice shaking. Mom, we needed that place. I promised Bree. Yes. I interrupted. You promised your wife something that was never yours to give. He flinched, eyes filling with a mix of guilt and anger. We're your family. Then act like it. I snapped, the calm cracking for the first time. Because family doesn't plan your funeral while you're still breathing. For a moment, no one spoke. Even Bree seemed to lose her script. Then she found it again. Sharp and cutting. You've lost it. Evelyn, this isn't rational. You're sick. Paranoid. That welfare check was your doing. I cut in. She froze. I reached into my bag and pulled out the binder. Thick and organized.